Anybody else?
Yeah, let's.
This is Patrick Ambron. Patrick is the founder of brandyourself.com. Graduated of Syracuse University.
I did.
Talk more about yourself, but we're going to make this very intimate. You want to have questions? Make it easy.
Absolutely. So yeah, I run a company called brandyourself.com. What that does, quite simply, is it helps people look better online. So a lot of times people come to us because they have issues online that are hurting them. That could be a bad Google result, right? Someone trashing you on the web and it's showing up. It could be something you posted, that was ill-advised or stupid on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever it might be. But also we have a lot of people who come to us who they don't have any issues they're dealing with, but they realize that looking good online and then doing a good job of showcasing your skills and things like that actually help you get more opportunities and increasingly so. I'll go into a little bit more about that, but we're about a 100-person company based in New York, and we have an office in Pennsylvania as well. And what this presentation takes you through is why everybody to start needs to be caring about their online reputation. How you guys doing?
Good.
You guys want to sit over here?
So the first thing, a lot of people come to us and they come to us only when it's too late. A lot of customers already have had an issue online, so they realize it's causing them problems. But one of the things we try to stress is that everybody has an online reputation, and it's a very, very important part of your career, increasingly so. I don't know if any of you have been applying for jobs or internships, but one of the things you'll see is one of the newest things you'll get is an email, usually from a background check company, where they now do direct online social media screens, in which you have 24 hours to friend request an account on all the accounts you have, and then they have people who go through and look at every single post that has ever been made. 75% of HR departments are required to actually do it now. And every year the amount of companies that are not only screening but doing advanced screening is huge. And I would say that's probably a bad thing. I don't know if anyone ever here watches the show Black Mirror. But if you do, there's an episode that shows kind of this runaway idea that you get ranked and graded on every interaction and it follows you around everywhere. And in some ways, that is what we're starting to see. So you're going to get looked up online before anything important. The problem is a lot of people aren't represented well online. So I'm assuming, has everyone here ever Googled somebody before or looked them up? Has anyone here Googled themselves or looked themselves up? Now, would you say that what shows up about you is a really good representation of who you are? So if I was thinking about, say, hiring you or working with you or whatever, would your Google results do the best job of selling you? Most people do. Yeah?
I have a question. So for that job interview thing, can't you just say you don't have any social media, or
you could
make a fake account or whatever? Or?
So there's two things you could do, right? You could say I don't have any, and technically, on the one hand, they might say okay. A lot of employers, so there's an organization called SHRM, which is the best practices of hiring and things like that. That's seen as a red flag in and of itself. So that doesn't give you any points by saying I don't exist on the web. Because it's a red flag because a lot of times they won't believe you. Or B, it seems like, well, it's also strange. It's not a good thing to say you've detached it. It's a sign that you're not maybe with the times, right? The second thing you can do is give them a fake account. Well, I think the terms are like a Finstagram or things like that. Could that effectively work? Sure. Right, but it's also a false sense of security, because what the online screening, as that gets more and more advanced, they have things that can crawl and trying to find a picture of you associated with another account. So for eventually, 3 years from now, they'll be able to find you. Right, it's not going to be, and it's also a false sense of security, because this is just trying to get the job. And just to be clear what my stance is, I think it's a terrible thing. I hate the idea of online screening, and that all this stuff that you do on the web, considering you do everything on the web, can come back and be used out of context to make these important decisions. But let's say you successfully give them the fake account, you pass the check, and you have your real stuff over here. You get the job. then you all work at the same place. You and him become friends on Facebook, right? And he's now going through your real stuff or Instagram, and he finds something that he thinks is offensive, right? A joke. So he goes and he brings that to HR. And HR then says, okay, noted, you made a joke that you perceived as sexist or something that you didn't like. And maybe HR decides, okay, there's nothing really here, but that's on record now, and you don't even know about it. And then it's going up who's getting the next promotion, and you get passed over just because of that type of complaint. So there's a false sense of security people have where I use a different name, or I have a fake account, or I tell them that I'm not, because as these screening techniques become more advanced, A, they're more likely to find it. It's a red flag to say you don't have them, and then B, that's not the only vulnerability you have with what you're posting online. And most people, again, fall into one of three categories. Obviously, the first category is the worst one, and that's when, there's stuff out there when you get looked up that's actually hurting you. It's objectively hurting your chances of getting certain opportunities. I'll go more into, because a lot of people think it's just this stuff, like the really obvious poor judgment, like, of course you shouldn't have pictures like that on the web, but what we'll take you through is if there's things you can do to protect yourself from things like this, because it could happen to anybody, not maybe this extreme, but I'll kind of walk through why there are vulnerabilities everybody has to having negative things about them on the web. A lot of people fall into this category, where you are being looked up, and I'm using the employer use case. It gets used for more than just employers. Like if you're freelancing, or you're starting a business, or you're hiring, just the employer use case is an easy one to it's an easy analogy, but they're not just looking for things and red flags. They're also looking for reinforcing factors. So the irrelevant category is just a missed opportunity. So instead of finding out that you're, a prominent member in X club and you worked on some interesting projects and you have really interesting thoughts about the industry and you won this award, I find out that you played soccer in high school, or you share a name with 5 other people who also have kind of irrelevant stuff out there. And it's just a missed opportunity to actually, make an impression. To kind of go off that and tie it back before, like 75% and growing of HR departments are doing online screening. 56% won't interview you if you don't have an online presence. And that just goes back to the idea that just saying you're invisible or don't exist isn't always the best way to go. And then there's the hey, that's not me category. It's actually my co-founder, Pete. The reason we started the company was when we were in school, he shared a name with a drug dealer that people thought were him. He was being looked up, and he was losing opportunities because of it. If you get looked up and it's not you, again, best case scenario, you're like the irrelevant category. You're losing an opportunity to impress the person who's trying to find information on you. Worst case scenario, though, could be as bad as the negative category, where you're actually being mistaken for something that isn't you. So, why does everyone need to pay attention? So a damaging result can happen to anyone and ruin your business, your career, whatever it might be. The first reason is anyone can say anything about you online without getting in trouble, whether it's true or not. So this is, you didn't even do anything, but someone posted something about you on the web. And it happens all the time. Some of the big ones are, which wouldn't be relevant for everyone in this room quite yet, but you fire somebody. So you start getting in your career and you're starting to get successful, you're managing people, you let someone go. That person's not happy about it, and they go online and vindictively, and usually anonymously, there's a lot of places you can do this, and just trash you. Shows up number 1 for Google, right? That's the only thing out there, and you start thinking twice, like, I'm worried about going for the next job or leaving mine, because if you look me up, it looks like I'm some horrible, terrible boss, and it's a red flag. In the most extreme cases, and we deal with this a tragic amount. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term revenge porn. Revenge porn is when usually it happens after a breakup, and the person unhappy about the breakup posts photos, videos, or whatever that weren't meant for, widespread consumption, and they post them on the web. And it's really hard to enforce. It's illegal in most states, but almost impossible to enforce. And it's the same idea. That person has gone out and really put a dent in your own online reputation. And I'll give more examples later. But the second reason is maybe someone doesn't go and attack you, but you shoot yourself in the foot. Because now we do everything online, right? That's the way we communicate. Text messages, Facebook Messenger, whatever it might be. All of that can be used to, judge you. And it was kind of interesting. Earlier this year, in the same month, there were there was 10 kids, I think, who got accepted in Harvard and then had their offers rescinded because of what they were posting on Facebook. And then you start thinking, the kids were being idiots, and that's just something young people do. In the same month, to show how it affects everyone from executives all the way down to teenagers, a dean at Yale got fired for what she was posting on Yelp. And it's just kind of the idea that we use online communities the same way we do in where you and I have a different context than I would to a group, but you put that online and seen in the wrong way, it could have a big impact. There's actually this quote that's from the 15th century. It's a cardinal who basically, it was not during the Inquisition, but something similar, and it said, give me 6 lines written by the most honest hand, and I'll find something to have him hanged. And the idea being that just one thing out of context, a lot of people are vulnerable to a single post or a single thing that could shoot themselves in the foot. And there's stories, and it can completely ruin your career. There's a lot of books being written about this. One is So You've Been Publicly Shamed. Another one that just came out that our company is actually heavily involved in is called Shame Nation. And it's a huge problem. In the entire, just all of this is a huge problem. So big that the EU had passed laws called Right to be Forgotten, which basically demanded Google to say, you need to create ways for people to have things removed from Google because of what a long-standing impact it has on your entire life. It's like a prison sentence that never goes away sometimes, which is, it follows you around so long. And the law, really interestingly, is more of a gesture than it is something that's easy to enforce, and it's very subjective, but just shows that when they first announced it, there was millions of people in the first month that were trying to get things de-indexed and removed from Google. And the second reason you need to pay attention is what I was getting at before. Having good online content actually helps you, but most people don't know how to do it or the time to maintain it. You think about this, for anybody graduating, you look at the new job stats, on average you're going to be switching jobs every 2 to 3 years, and 40% of you will be freelancing to some extent by 2020 as well, which means you're always kind of promoting yourself to your next employer, your next client. And unfortunately, those who look really good, forget about not having anything bad out there, the ones who are really good at promoting themselves on the web will get a lot more of the opportunities. And in fact, what we find is there's an inverse relationship between people who are good at promoting themselves and people who are actually good at what they're promoting themselves for. But it doesn't matter, because those are the people who do get the opportunities. And that's not actually new, it just translates to online. There's a study, I think it's done at Carnegie Mellon, where basically it's like a social study in confidence and how confidence plays into success and self-promotion in a way. And what the professor does is he gives everyone in the class a list of historical names and events, and you have to rate how confident you are that you could speak in front of the class about those historical events and do a really good job and know the topic really well. And every year he has fake historical names and events on it, so they're made up. And every year there's a few people who are confident in all of them, including the fake ones. So they really believe they know factually stuff that's fiction. And then at the end of the year, though, he has all the kind of students rank who do they thought was the most competent. And every year it's the same people ranked best among their peers are the ones who were so overconfident they thought they knew stuff about fake events and fake people. But the idea is, even if, self-promotion is an important area. And, there are things you should be doing to just make sure that you're throwing your hat in the ring and your skills are showcased, because it's an important part of getting opportunities. And now that just translates to online and when you get looked up and when you go through that initial online screening. So why is it important to brand yourself? Again, it protects you from damaging info showing up about you on the web, and 2, it opens the door to new career opportunities. So how do you do that? So the first thing you should do before you kind of go for these opportunities is clean up anything damaging on social media. So do a quick audit of yourself. Here's a list of things that employers are looking for as red flags. Derogatory language, What that means too is they're looking for anything that would indicate that you have, homophobic, bigoted, sexist views, or just really, really derogatory language towards individuals or groups of people, right? Employers don't want to be associated with someone who's, any of those things. So they're looking for posts. And the second thing is any unprofessional work or school behavior. So what that means is trashing an ex-boss, or complaining about work, complaining about school, complaining about a professor. Even if you're joking, that's a lot of times people are just lightheartedly joking, but again, these people aren't, they're just get it flagged, and that just puts you in a category that makes you, a potential liability. They're looking for anything that shows violence or bullying, right? Aggressive behavior, so you want to avoid that kind of stuff. Irresponsible drinking or drug use. So even if, you're of age and you're not technically doing anything illegal, I think when employers see it, considering all this stuff is accessible, it's just a lack of judgment they see as having that something forward-facing about you. So even if, a lot of, especially students think, well, I'm 21, so I don't have to worry about that. It's just more of the way it's seen as a poor way to present yourself. Criminal behavior, anything sexually explicit, and then unprofessional communication style. So if you're writing in a lot of ways that, isn't professional, grammar mistakes, lack of punctuation, again, it's a red flag. And these again, every year, Career Builder and SHRM do a big kind of comprehensive study, and these are shown as the repeated red flags that employers look for. The bad part is, again, as they use more and more tools to go through your stuff, and companies that go through and try to find this stuff, what we see is for every 1 or 2 or 3 people that you might have, got and said, good, we dodged a bullet here, you get 7, 8 people who just, it's out of context, it was poor judgment, and you're kind of unfairly, judging that person. Like, oh, I was quoting my favorite comedian. It was actually satire, but it got put in the derogatory. And it's just things like that, and that's happening more and more. Now, on average, you see, to go through what these companies do and to go through all your own posts of everything that you've ever been tagged in, or you've ever, done, takes the average person about 12 or 13 hours. So it's a long process to try to clean yourself out. And on top of that, a lot of people miss things. Like, they don't know that that's something that would have been a flag. So even if you take the time, one of the features of our product is we cut that down to about 15 minutes. And we'll show you all the things that are likely to be seen as a red flag, or whether it's an image or a post and things like that would be flagged by hiring managers' algorithm, and then that way you can, clean that kind of stuff up. So the first step is clean up your social media presence. The second thing is Google your name, right? You should know if there's anything out there that would potentially harm you. Again, complaints, disparaging, negative press or gossip sites. These are the type of things, and I'll kind of go into the end of the presentation, that if you do have something high in Google, with social media, hopefully it's easy. Hopefully you can delete or untag yourself, and no harm, no foul there. If it's something in Google, it's likely something someone else posted, and there's things you can do to kind of combat that, which I'll get into later. But the first idea is just to see where you stand. The second is start building stuff you would want someone to find, right? This is the stuff in the screening that you think would help you, showcasing your skills. So the first thing is, doing things like building a personal website. Does everyone here have a personal website? So, absolutely should. This is one of the easy ways to just kind of have these will, if you do it right, these will rank really high for your name. So if an employer or someone looks you up, it'll be one of the first things they go to, and you can basically make it all the information someone needs to know about you. Projects you worked on, you can use it to blog, which I'll get into. You don't need to be technical. Basically, there are so many free website builders that are easy to use, from Squarespace to WordPress. I like WordPress. They're all great. WordPress is great because it's easy to use if you don't know how to build a website, but if you ever want to go and get a little bit more down and dirty in it, it gives you a lot more customization and ability to do more. But all of them are great. This is what you would fill with relevant content about yourself. Again, this is anything you think an employer should know about you. Projects you've worked on, personal interests, just kind of have one hub for yourself. Second is get on social networks, obviously assuming you've cleaned them up. Have a few on forward facing. The reason is you want to own those first few Google results. Google ranks social media sites like them very high because they're very authoritative. You control them, so you can decide what content you have on those. LinkedIn's an easy one that ranks really well, professional. Everyone should be on LinkedIn. Anybody familiar with SlideShare? So SlideShare is a place where you upload presentations, keynotes, PowerPoints, and it's great. Google ranks them really high. There's actually like a built-in audience in there. A lot of people like consuming content. And basically you probably have lots of projects you've worked on. You throw them up there, and they rank really high. It's a good place to kind of have other content about yourself on there. But again, if you don't have anything negative out there about you, again, try to build 3 to 5 personal website and 2 or 3 social networks. Again, that kind of gives you a much better chance of having a few things that rank on the first page. Will give you a big edge over other people who don't have any information out there about them. And you can choose, a social network you'd feel most comfortable being professional on and putting content on every so often, which I'll get into. So just because you build stuff, how do you make sure it's what's actually ranking above negative or irrelevant stuff or other people with the same name? That's what's known as SEO. Does everyone here know what search engine optimization is? It just means the process of creating or improving content to make sure it shows up as high as possible for a specific keyword. In this case, that keyword's your name. SEO is one of the most overcomplicated things in the sense of it's actually not rocket science. It's not overly difficult. Basically, SEO can be separated into 2 categories. Stuff on the page, stuff off the page. So let's say I had a personal website and I wanted to rank number 1 when someone Googled Patrick Ambron. The on-page factors are things that I can actually control on the page. So like the architecture and structure of a site. So Google and other search engines send out bots. They go and they try to figure out what the site's about. Just to kind of give a sense of that, back in, if you guys remember, like in the 90s when every website was like built in Flash, if you guys remember Flash websites, one of the big reasons those went away is search engines couldn't read them. So no matter what the site was and how good it was about a topic, it was never going to rank. And that's one of the big reasons Flash went away. When you use something like WordPress or Squarespace, a lot of that is taken care of. You don't have to worry too much about that kind of stuff. Keyword and content. If I want my site to rank number 1 for my name, but I don't really mention my name anywhere, how would Google know to rank it there? And there are certain places where you can put your name and to make sure that it's clear that's what the point of the site is. Back in the day when SEO was a much bigger thing and Google wasn't nearly as sophisticated, keyword stuffing was a big thing. So you could put like Patrick Ambron on the site 1 million times and Google would think it was really, really important about Patrick Ambron. But, it would look weird if you went to the site. So it would be things like you'd put white text on a white background. So as a visitor, you wouldn't notice that. And it was just trying to trick the search engine. Google's gotten a lot of more sophisticated since then. A lot of that stuff doesn't work. So, if you're trying to cheat, it probably won't work. And then there's relevancy. So if I have 2 sites about Patrick Ambron, one hasn't been updated in, 2 years and one's being updated every month, Google's going to want to rank the more relevant one because it thinks for the person looking for it, it's got more relevant and recent information. So that's the stuff you can do. I'll be basically saying how can you apply this to your website and 4 or 5 social media profiles. Off-page factors are things that I don't control. They're like credibility boosters, so there's links and social sharing. So everything that's linking to my site, Google thinks as a vote. The more votes you have and the more credible the votes are coming from, the higher the site will rank. Again, for a very, very long time, that was the game of SEO. It's how many links could you build to your stuff to get it to rank. And Google was always trying to figure out how to get rid of, people were building directories and link farms and stuff like that, and Google was always trying to catch up and find bad links so they didn't count towards. One of the big things that happened a few years ago that really changed that dynamic was when they started saying, bad links won't only not count, they're actually going to hurt you. And a lot of companies got hit from that. I remember the first year they did it, like JCPenney got hit so hard they lost something like tens of millions of dollars during the holiday period because, and JCPenney didn't even know, you hire a marketing firm SEO, they weren't realizing they were doing all this kind of SEO stuff, and all their rankings just dropped, and they weren't showing up, and people weren't buying their stuff. Not to digress, but then, like, at the SEO world that was a really interesting thing, because people kind of started thinking that, well, if I can't just create links to my own stuff because they'll hurt me, what if I just started sending bad links to my competitor's site and hurt them? And it works. You can do that. The only answer they have to it is you can disavow bad links to let Google know, I don't know why these are coming to me. I don't want them. I'm not trying to get them. But if you're like a local pizza shop and you don't even know that's happening, like that's a very effective way. There was just an article that came out in Fast Company. You guys know, like, all the new online mattresses, Casper. There's like a million of them. There was this whole thing of like the online world of SEO of all the review sites, and Casper got caught basically. They didn't officially do it, but it was clear they hired someone to start sending negative SEO towards other competitors, and their rankings started dropping. It's a very interesting world. Again, unless your name is like mattress or car insurance, this isn't going to be relevant for trying to rank for your name. But social sharing is the same thing. If people are sharing your site or your profile, it's a signal to a search engine that this is a really important thing and it should rank really high. So what does this mean for your stuff? If you take nothing away from this presentation as an action item, except for one thing, it should be this thing. Does everyone here own their domain name or some version of it? Absolutely do it. PatrickAmbron.com, Patrick Ambron. Try to get your .com, your .net, your .org. Now there's a million other things you can get. It's not very expensive. 12 to 20 bucks a year. If your name.com is taken, do something like PatrickAmbronOnline.com, PatrickAmbronDesign.com. You want a .com, .net, .org, at least for now. I mean, the best ones you can get are .edus or .govs, because not everyone can have them, and Google finds them the most credible. Even if you're not planning on having a personal website, which you should, it's more just saving your own real estate. Because when you don't, we see it all the time. Someone else, maybe it's not even vindictive, it's somebody else with your name, and they're going to go take all your spots in Google. But a lot of times it's that person you fired, that person you broke up with, that person who wants the thing over you. You don't have it, they get it. It is going to be very hard if they know what they're doing to combat and get your name back when you get looked up. I actually have a bunch of slides. Every election now, somebody doesn't get their domain name. So in this last one, Jeb Bush's domain.com went to Trump's site. When he went to tedcruz.com, basically someone else got that, it went there. And again, these are all one of the first results for these types of people. Basically, most of the Republican candidates did not get their domain names, and other people did. And again, we see this all the time in professional context. So even if you don't plan on using it, get your domain name, because it's something that's going to rank high, and you don't want someone else to have it. And you should be using it yourself. Structure your site well. Again, most of the free site builders out there are going to do most of the heavy lifting for you. So for you, just make sure you have your name and things like the title tag in places like the navigation as the main heading of each page. That'll be a very clear thing that Patrick Ambron or your name or whoever is the main keyword that this thing should be ranking for. And same thing with social media. Use your real names. Google doesn't know your nicknames. The idea is you're having 3 to 5 properties that you want employers to find. So you want Google to find them, which means use your name. Don't use your nickname. And then link them all together. So if you build, a website and 4 properties that you're keeping active, which I'll get into, and you link them all together, you built yourself a nice little network of high-ranking content about yourself. And that's, a lot of people get tempted, because I'll get into, like, when you have a negative result and you need to get a lot of stuff ranking above it, people start getting tempted to the idea that I'm going to build 100 profiles as fast as I can and link them all together. And there's a lot of quality over quantity. You're better off having 10 things that you're keeping up to date that are good content on them, linking to each other, than having 100 things that you're not maintaining and stuff like that. So only do it if you're actually going to put the effort in to make the properties useful properties. Again, this is just to say, like, when we have more advanced customers who come to us because they need to get a bunch of stuff because they're trying to outrank, a bad review or something like that, you kind of create more advanced link structures and stuff like that. But again, unless you're facing a specific issue, you don't have to think too much about that. And then, all right, now that you have these properties, spend some time creating valuable content. And this is where a lot of people get held up, but could be the biggest key to giving you that, going onto the other side of getting an edge in career opportunities. First thing is to start blogging. And before I even get into this, a lot of people think if I'm creating content, nobody's reading it, nobody's like, it's not the same thing as saying you need to go build a giant audience, right? Think of this as due diligence. Remember, you don't have a big audience, but you will have some audience, and it'll be important audience. The people who are thinking about working with you, hiring you, when they do their due diligence, when they find you and they find the properties that look good and explain who you are, having good content that's been there, that's who's going to read it and find it, and that's the opportunity to impress them with what you know about your industry. So you don't need a big audience. It's just for the due diligence audience. The hiring manager, the client, or whatever, that's who you should be thinking of. It might be 10 people a year, but those are the 10 people a year that you're trying to impress. So unless you're an objectively terrible writer with no intention to improve, you should be writing blog posts every once in a while, even if it's once a month. Now, a lot of people, get kind of overwhelmed by this, but it's as simple as, let's say you're going into entrepreneurship. So once a month, find a really interesting article or news about entrepreneurship, whether it's Snap's earning calls or whatever, and just write a response to it. What you thought about it, why you found it interesting. Again, that's a good piece of content that the other guy might not have. That just shows you're thinking about this stuff and more thoughtful. And then you can break that up. That turns into a tweet. That turns into a LinkedIn post. That turns into something you can throw up on SlideShare or one of the other things. So just spending 45 minutes a month gives you a lot of headway on this stuff. And like I said, if I'm looking someone up and I'm thinking about hiring my next director, and I look up the first person and there's a bunch of terrible social media posts, easy, I'll move on. I look up the second person, I don't find much at all. I look up the third person and they're writing about this stuff. They're talking about what they've learned about managing people. I found their LinkedIn profile. I went to their website, which took me to a really interesting project they worked on in the past. That person, before the process even starts, has a huge edge over the other two people. Post interesting industry content. Again, it's a similar thing. You don't have to spend too much time. You can just follow other feeds, find things that you're interested in, and just make sure you're posting things that are relevant to your industry. So what to do if something negative does show up for your name? Does anyone here actually have a situation that they're open to raising their hand about, that they've actually had negative things about them show up in Google? So that's good. If you did, so I won't spend too much time on it. If you did, you've got two options. Remove it, right? That'd be the big win. Get rid of it. It's very rare. Only happens in certain situations. One is you can ask the person to take it down. This is assuming it's not something you posted that you can just go delete yourself. That works in very rare cases. Again, if it's like a journalist or press articles, they're not going to do that. There's a case where someone, a successful guy, had run a bunch of companies, does a lot of keynotes now. He went to a conference and had like a big screen behind him. They had like live tweets and he's addressing it. And I guess his address was boring and people were tweeting things like, "Oh, this is so boring. Who is this guy?" And he looked at it and he took it in stride, and it was fine. He walked it off. That happens. Not his best day. But someone was writing a trend piece about how technology has changed the conference scene, and they used that as an example, the live feedback. And it was his very first Google result. He didn't have much of an online presence. He goes, "Now you look at me. I've had this long career, and this incident seems like the most important thing that's ever happened to me. And it just makes me seem like some big, boring speaker." And we were actually able to reach out to the author and say, because it wasn't about him, it's like, could you not use his full name? Because, this is what's happening, and they were actually happy to change it, right? Most of the time, especially if it's a vindictive post about you, they could actually open up a can of worms of trying to get them to take it down, because then they double down on it, and they even use it more. It's like, "Oh, look, this person's trying to silence me. It's all true," that kind of thing. So you got to be careful with that one. The second is you can have it de-indexed. So that means at least it's not showing up in Google search. Google will de-index things for 3 reasons. Number one, a DMCA takedown, which is copyright. We use this one for revenge porn a lot because a lot of times the original picture was taken by the victim. Means they own the copyright. Google will allow you to have things de-indexed if you can show you own the copyright. So it still exists on the original site, but where most people are finding it, it's gone at least. It's no longer in those search results. Or defamation, right? So if you've proven something is defamatory in court, you have a court order, Google will allow you to de-index that as well. Two things to know. They don't have to do this. Legally, they don't. They just choose to. And for example, the defamation thing they're starting to do less of because a few crappy companies really abused it. And there was a whole scam of getting fake court orders or getting fake defendants and things like that. And Google kind of said, we're going to stop doing this. And then, as I said, there's the right to be forgotten, which is the European thing. About 30 to 40% of requests actually get granted. And if you're not European, it doesn't matter. It only like if you go to .co.uk, you get it de-indexed from there. It still shows up on Google.com. So you'd have to go to go through the process for every single European country to get it completely removed from all those, and it'll never be removed from Google.com, which is still widely used in a lot of other countries as well. The other thing, if you can't get it removed, is to do what we were just talking about, except a lot more of it, right? You bury it, you minimize the damage. If I was to look you up and the first thing I found was this person saying you were the worst boss and worst manager and you were terrible, I would have a bad impression of you. If I first found all this stuff that showed you worked at a company for 20 years, you won this award, you've got posts, you've managed 100 people, here's some of your work, and I end up finding that thing on page 2 beneath all this positive stuff, it's a much smaller piece of a much bigger pie. So the idea is you can minimize the damage of a negative post by A, making it harder to find, but B, surrounding it by a much more kind of holistic sense of positive and relevant things. And that's usually one of the most, in fact, I'd say at this point even more effective than getting things removed because, again, a lot of those things surface somewhere. And when employers are screening you, they are looking for red flags. They're looking for reinforcing factors. And the idea is if you have more reinforcing factors and red flags, you're still in a decent place. And that's why it's so important. Doing this kind of stuff, though, can also protect you in the future. So if you've done this and you built a strong online presence and you own a lot of your Google results and you pissed me off and I decide to get vindictive and post something about you, it's going to be a lot harder for that thing to really gain any sort of traction and show up really high because it's got so much relevant stuff to compete with. So, that's kind of just stuff I wanted to go over. We've got a tool, brandyourself.com. You can sign up for it. It allows you to do things like scan your social media, see if you have any negative Google results, walks you through the process of building and optimizing positive properties. It is basically a free tool. If you want all features, it's $100 a year. This was a presentation, a slide from somewhere else, but if you want to use real estate, you can get 25% off as well. So thank you very much, guys.
Anybody have any questions?
I share a name with a very famous law professor. And
Okay.
Unless you tack on any other information about me that you might be looking for, I'm buried 15 pages down.
Got it. So you already mentioned it. Again, employers are actively trying to find information about you. So they don't stop when they realize you share a name with someone who's very well known or famous. What you mentioned, and there's 3 queries that are almost used regardless, including your name. It's your name plus school or your name plus last job, your name plus location, and your name plus industry. They'll look for all of those because they're trying to find good things and bad things. So just because you don't own Patrick Ambron doesn't mean we don't know anything good or bad about him. They're going to look up Patrick Ambron, brand yourself in the screening process. They're going to look up Patrick Ambron, Syracuse. They're going to look up Patrick Ambron, web design. And they're going to see what shows up. And so what you really want to do is make sure you have stuff visible for something. You want good content out there and you want to avoid bad content and look for your results for those queries as well. Because you can own those as well. And when you kind of go through the optimization process, you want to include those keywords as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, yes, it doesn't mean just because you have a common name or someone famous or well-known with your name that you can't have a good online reputation. Or it also means you aren't safe from the bad things. It means they're just looking at other terms and they're still trying to find stuff about you. Get a question?
Oh yeah, I was just kind of wondering about if Snapchat has any role or things that if you're private, are they able to see any stuff?
So Snapchat, you're not going to, as of now, is not being touched in most screenings. Most screenings aren't asking for your Snapchat stuff. So on the one hand, you're likely to pass an online screening. That's the good news. But as you guys know, that doesn't mean stuff you do on Snapchat is absolutely safe. Because, again, even if one person takes a screenshot and then they go and they put it somewhere else, right? That's liability number one. Number two, hacks and stuff like that. I mean, you may not be a target now. But again, the more successful you become, the more likely you are to be a target. I think it was I think Jennifer Lawrence might have been Snapchat when her photos got leaked. But if not, those things are very vulnerable. They exist on a server even when they disappear. So you should keep in mind, again, the false sense of security on a lot of these things is Snapchat is encrypted, so you're safe there. Like, for example, if you're messaging with your friends, like using WhatsApp, much safer than using Facebook Messenger. WhatsApp is encrypted, Facebook Messenger is not, which makes it way more vulnerable. But even in those private things, like they're not going to be seen by an employer in a screening. Doesn't mean there isn't something that could happen that would make it go public. And what happens is, in this day and age, when you, like, let's say you start becoming successful, you become a bigger target for finding those things that you thought were under privacy settings because they do exist on a server somewhere.
So I know like everything that's posted online is like always online, not like was visible online, but like once you post it, like, you can never like truly remove it.
Right.
Do companies like look into that, or they just look into like what is like viewed like?
Yeah. So companies now. So let's go back to the use case of I'm thinking about hiring you, or I'm even thinking about working with you, even with the screening tools. Like they're not going, because what you're talking about is, let's say I deleted the photo I was doing a keg stand. I was like, I don't think this is going to be a good look for me. I delete it. Your point is it still exists on Facebook's server. But the employer in that case is not going to find it. You're safe from where you'll get in trouble, though, is, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, is let's say I wanted to accuse you of something. I said you, and hopefully it's a lie. I said you sexually harassed me. I will get access to all the stuff you said. I can get access to everything you pretty much ever wrote in a text message, put on Facebook Messenger, GChat, Gmail, anything you've browsed, anything you've put into a Google search box. I can get that via a subpoena, right? Because it does exist. That's where it doesn't go away. So you're not going to get it from a screen. You're not going to have someone finding it by doing advanced research. But once you get into the legal things, if I'm suing you or accusing you of something and we're starting to go through the court system, I get access to all that. I don't even need a warrant. I don't even need to have a lot of evidence. I just have to say I'm suing you. And I can get all of that stuff. Now, again, that's why the ones that are encrypted are even better, because then like WhatsApp goes in and says, here's all the stuff, but it doesn't mean anything to anyone because it's encrypted. We don't know what the real thing is. So that's why using encrypted stuff gives you a bit more of a layer of protection, because they don't have it, right? They don't have it unencrypted. So then the only vulnerability is on your own device, right? Your device or the other person's device. And if you take it off that, it's really hard to get that stuff, if that makes sense.
Anybody else?
All right, well,
Thanks.
cool, guys.
I thought this was very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, for a lot of it's a lot. A lot of people learn about it when, the oh shit moment happens, and there's a lot you can do more proactively to just avoid those. Because again, I don't think it's a good thing, because we use a lot of these online tools the same way. Like we naturally, we understand our social circles, how we interact in different places. What's professional, what I would do at work, isn't what I would do with my friends from high school, over Thanksgiving weekend. How we would speak to each other is not how I would speak to, my new boss, right? And we get that. Everyone does that. But we haven't translated, we don't really, online's the same thing. And because we don't understand how these things are stored, suddenly you're having all these things cross paths and being like, you're unprofessional. It's like, well, I wasn't trying to be. It's just that, that was only meant to be seen by those guys. So I think that's what's happening. There was just last week, there was a guy who had worked his way up pretty high in the British government, and they found a tweet from like 13 years ago, or a Facebook post from like 13 years ago when he was like 18. And he made, it was not a great joke. It was a joke about their version of American Idol, about one of the people. He made a joke, an overweight joke. Lost his job from years ago. Someone brought it up, they didn't like it, and because that's what happens, and it's kind of that thing where it's like, it's just, I don't know, maybe that guy really was a terrible guy. But if that's all you're judging him on, there's also, it's like, that's kind of a scary thought that, he was probably thinking of it like, yeah, everyone's made a bad joke, especially when you're young. Should that be something that can carry all the way? Like, you can never get away from that joke for as long as you live because you happen to have posted it online. And stories like that happen on a daily basis now.
So can you scrum off posts from social media like that? Are those things that you can remove, things that you previously said? It's not just, you can certainly remove photos, but like...
Yeah, posts. Yeah, absolutely. Again, you can get them deleted to the point they still exist on the server, but then that's if you go to legal route, but for most intents and purposes, like you can go back, and that's, again, one of the things our products do is tries to show you all the things you've ever posted that you might just want to delete. Because it could be seen as one of those categories. And you can decide to do two things. Be like, you flagged it wrong, it's not, okay? Or I get it, I don't care. Sure, you do what you want, just wanted to show you, or you delete it. We're actually coming out with a, am I on the internet here? Let's see if I can get to this. I might not be able to.
Oh, you might have to sign into Colgate Guest.
Oh, I think I'm in.
Oh, good.
So this isn't live yet. This is something we've been working on for a very, very long time. We might hit a bunch of bugs because it's just a staging environment. So I'm not sure this is going to work. Let's see if I can log in here. So basically, we look at everything. So this will be coming out early next year, maybe late this year. So it's the newest version of our product. And if you sign up for our current product, which is way less great than this, it'll just switch over to you whenever we launch this. So basically, we're looking at everything associated with you on the web. Posts, images, Google results, and you basically get a score like a credit score, which is basically matching that against a known database of red flags and reinforcing factors employers and other things use. Your score can be hurt by risk. So these are still scanning my social media posts. They can be hurt. They can be affected by a negative search result, right? And depending on how much that hurts you, shows how visible, how negative it is, and what you can do to start minimizing the damage. Social media posts, unprofessional images. How strong your personal brand is. Do you exist in good places? It kind of walks you through, based off your industry, where you should exist, where employers are expecting to see you. How quality is it? Is it ranking really high? Your Google visibility, do you look positive or negative or anything like that? Let's see if I still have some of my V5 staging. So I had to delete them recently, but even me, I haven't had to go for a job in a long time, and if I did, there was a bunch of images from me from high school and college that would absolutely have made me fail a test. And I deleted them recently because I had to go through for a press opportunity, like a social media screening. So I was like, but I kept them for a while because it was great for demos to show how our product flags them. I don't know if I'll be able to get to this here, but there's not going to be too much. But you go in, and then that's how the product works. It shows you risk factors. It shows you things like that. Helps you delete risk factors or remove them, and actually walks you through the process of building, the stuff you should be building. Let's see if I can look at that. So it recommends the properties it thinks you have. It's recommending how many you need based off what's out there about you, if you have it. It's also saying, let's make sure it's search engine friendly, so it ranks high. Let's make sure it's high quality, so it can kind of tell, are you linking to the right places? Do you have your, the search engine things? Is your summary written the right way? And I can see there's a bunch of stuff I can do to actually improve my LinkedIn and make it a more impressive property. Yeah, again, this is not live, right? Our current product is way less advanced than this, but if you sign up now, sometime between now and January, it'll be rolled into this, and it's a good way before you go for a job interview, go just see what your score is. See if you have to clean anything up. See if you can do anything to improve it and put you into a better category.
So if you sign up for that, and it's $100 a year or whatever, but you can access this every single day if you want?
Yeah, and it's monitoring too, so it's doing two things. The easiest way to say what the ongoing stuff is, you get two types of emails and alerts. One is a monitoring alert. It'll let you know that as soon as we find, like let's say you posted something stupid and you didn't realize it, or a new Google result showed up, or you just got tagged in a photo from your friend and it's flagged, we'll let you know, and you can go in and be like, untag, delete, or whatever. So there's a monitoring element to it. But there's also just an action plan. So every week it's like, look, here's stuff we think you need to be doing this month that will actually kind of put you from fair to good, right? You haven't blogged in 2 months. Go write a blog post about this. Or, you haven't updated your whatever, and it kind of walks you through the process of things you can do. So it's the proactive side and the monitoring side, which is why you would pay, ongoingly instead of just a one-time. Although a lot of people just do it, clean themselves up, and get off. Obviously, we like them when they stay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can I ask this? What made you go into this? Like, what made you start this?
So when I was in school, my co-founder was being mistaken for a criminal, and he was having trouble getting jobs because of it. And this was, 8 years ago. So it was just like no one was like he tried to like, what do I do to fix this? And all the online reputation management firms, which were really geared towards corporate enterprises and businesses, he couldn't get a quote for under $25,000. And no one was just approaching it like. People realized back then this is starting to become important for businesses, and it's like this is going to be important for professionals and just consumers, and even more so I think every year. So we were just kind of like, why don't we create tools like this that are affordable, that kind of put consumers in the driver's seat. And I didn't even imagine how, like if you had asked me how, like I didn't think online screening would go in the direction it did, and that's been good for the business, but I'd argue bad for society. That online screening has for consumers has just gone up. There's someone here said they mentioned the Black Mirror episode. So I don't know if you read it. In China is introducing a citizen score, which is basically in China you get ranked on everything. Like for example, if you post bad about the government, your score goes down. Post good, it goes up. If your friends have bad scores, it brings in things like your credit score, and it affects things like can you travel, what kind of things do you get to. So it's like they're taking everything you do online, what websites you visit. Like they're even putting things in there like someone who spends too much time online is probably lazy, their score goes down. Like it's this really intense out of it. They're trying to just rank everybody based off everything they do on the web.
So was this a TV episode or this is real?
This is really what's happening
Wow.
in China. It's called the citizen score, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't think that would happen here, at least I hope not, but there was a TV episode that was similar to that, and that came out before this. When you read about the China thing, you think it's describing the plot of this show, but it's just this idea that your online presence is becoming like this very, very important part of important opportunities, and we're just trying to be in the place where, because a lot of people on the cutting edge of the technology are using it for the other side of the coin to help organizations, because it's not just employers, it's banks. It's banks are and credit scores are trying to say what else can we do to decide if we should lend this person money or not. And a lot of technology are going in to take your data, crunch it, and spit out like relevant insight. And we're using that same technology except giving it back to the consumer, which probably isn't as lucrative, but I like it better.
Well, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for having me, guys.